Lyra sat in the corner of the small living space, her fingers tracing the glowing patterns on her arms. The markings were a part of her people, the Vayans, and they showed her emotions whether she wanted them to or not. Right now they pulsed with a dull blue color that meant worry and fear. Her father paced back and forth across the room. His face looked older than it had just months ago, with deep lines around his eyes and mouth. Her mother sat at the table with her head in her hands. Neither of them had spoken to Lyra in almost an hour. The apartment was small and falling apart. Paint peeled from the walls. The heating unit made strange noises. They lived on the outer edge of the Kasari system, in a colony where no one came unless they had nowhere else to go. The Vayans had no homeworld anymore. It had been destroyed long before Lyra was born. Now her people scattered across the galaxy, trying to survive however they could. Lyra's younger brother and sister sat on the floor near their mother. They were only 8 and 6 years old. They did not understand what was happening, but they knew something was very wrong. Someone knocked on the door. The sound made Lyra jump. Her father stopped pacing and looked at the door like it was a wild animal. Her mother lifted her head and Lyra saw tears on her face. "Don't answer it," Lyra said. Her voice shook. "Please, father." "Don't." Her father would not look at her. He walked to the door and opened it. 3 large figures filled the doorway. They were Draxians, a species known across the galaxy for their cruelty. Their skin was thick and gray and their eyes were small and black. The one in front wore expensive clothes and had several weapons on his belt. "You have what we discussed?" the Draxian said. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. Lyra's father nodded. He still would not look at his daughter. "Father, no," Lyra said. She stood up, her legs shaking. "Please, there has to be another way." The Draxian looked at her and smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Ah, this is the payment. Good, she looks healthy." Lyra felt her blood turn cold. She looked at her mother, hoping for help, for something, but her mother only cried harder and turned away. "You can't do this," Lyra said. She wanted to sound strong, but her voice came out small and broken. "I'm your daughter." Her father finally looked at her. His eyes were red, but his jaw was set hard. "We have no choice. The debt is too much. They will kill us all if we don't pay. This way, at least your brother and sister can live. So you sell me instead?" Lyra could not believe what she was hearing. Families were supposed to protect each other. That was what her parents had always taught her. "How can you do this?" "It's already done," her father said. He pulled a small device from his pocket and held it out to the Draxian. "The contracts are all signed." The Draxian took the device and checked it. He nodded, satisfied. Then he gestured to the 2 behind him. They moved into the apartment and walked toward Lyra. Lyra tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The apartment was tiny, and they were between her and the only door. One of them grabbed her arm. His grip was like iron. She pulled and fought, but it did no good. "Mama, please," Lyra cried. Her markings flared bright with panic. "Don't let them take me." Her mother sobbed but did not move. Her father turned his back. Her little brother started crying. Her sister hid her face. The Draxians dragged Lyra toward the door. She screamed and fought with everything she had, but they were too strong. One of them pulled out a metal collar and snapped it around her neck. The moment it locked in place, Lyra felt something inside her shut off. Her empathic sense, the ability all Vayans had to feel the emotions of those around them, disappeared. It was like going deaf and blind at the same time. "No," she whispered. Without her empathic sense, she felt completely alone. Cut off from everything, they dragged her out of the apartment. The last thing Lyra saw was her father standing with his back to her, and her mother crying at the table. Then the door closed and they were gone. The Draxians pulled her through the colony's narrow streets. Other people saw what was happening, but no one helped. This was the kind of place where people did not interfere. Everyone had their own problems. They took her to a ship at the docking area. It was old and dirty, with stains on the hull that Lyra did not want to think about. They pushed her inside and locked her in a small room with no windows. The room smelled bad and had nothing in it except a bench and a bucket. Lyra sat on the bench and pulled her knees to her chest. She could not cry. The shock was too great. Her own family had sold her, given her to slavers to pay off debts. She had thought her father loved her. She had thought her mother would protect her. But when it came down to it, she was worth less to them than their own safety. The ship started moving. Lyra felt the vibration through the walls. They were leaving the colony, leaving everything she had ever known. Hours passed, or maybe days. Lyra could not tell in the windowless room. They gave her food twice, both times just a bowl of something that barely counted as soup. No one spoke to her. No one told her where they were going. Finally, the ship stopped. The door opened and different guards came in. These ones wore uniforms that said they worked for a processing facility. They grabbed Lyra and dragged her out. She found herself on a station. It was massive, filled with ships and people from 100 different species. But this was not a normal trading station. Lyra saw cages, cells, other beings locked up and waiting. They processed her like cargo, took her name, her species, her age, checked her health, asked her questions she did not want to answer. Then they threw her into a large holding cell with dozens of others. The cell was crowded and dirty. Beings from all over the galaxy sat or stood or lay on the floor. Some were injured. Some looked sick. All of them looked defeated. Lyra found a space against the wall and sat down. She wrapped her arms around herself and stared at nothing. The collar around her neck felt heavy. The loss of her empathic sense made everything feel wrong and empty. An old being shuffled over and sat near her. He looked like a Torvin, with wrinkled skin and kind eyes. "First time?" he asked. Lyra nodded. "It gets worse before it gets better," he said. "But you gotta stay strong. Don't let them break you inside. That's the only thing you got left that they can't take." Lyra wanted to believe him, but she did not know how to stay strong. Her family had already broken her. The people who were supposed to love her had thrown her away. What did she have left? She looked around the cell at the other prisoners. Some were crying. Some were angry. Some just looked empty. She wondered if that was her future. To become empty and hollow until there was nothing left of who she used to be. The old Torvin patted her shoulder gently. "What's your name, girl?" "Lyra," she whispered. "I'm Kellen. Been here 3 months now. Seen a lot of people come through. You got something in your eyes, though? A spark. Don't lose that." But Lyra felt like she had already lost everything that mattered. Her family, her freedom, her future. All she had left was fear and the memory of her father's back as he turned away from her. She closed her eyes and tried not to think about what would happen next. 3 weeks passed in the holding cell. Lyra learned quickly how life worked in this place. The strong took from the weak. The guards did not care about anything except keeping them alive enough to sell. Food came twice a day and was barely enough. Water was rationed. Privacy did not exist. Kellen, the old Torvin, taught her important lessons. He showed her how to make herself look calm even when she was terrified inside. Buyers liked the ones who looked broken because they caused less trouble. But they also avoided the ones who looked too scared because fear meant health problems or a weak mind. "You want to look somewhere in the middle," Kellen explained one night. "Not fighting, but not completely dead inside either. That gets you a better buyer. Maybe someone who will treat you a little less badly." Lyra did not think any buyer would treat her well, but she listened. Kellen had survived this long. He must know something. She watched as other prisoners were taken away for auction. Some came back to collect their few belongings before being shipped out. Others never returned at all, and Lyra did not want to think about why. Each time the guards came to the cell, everyone tensed up, wondering who would be next. On the 23rd day, the guards called Lyra's name. Her heart stopped. She looked at Kellen, and he nodded at her. "Remember what I told you. Stay calm. Show them you can think. That makes you more valuable, and valuable means better treatment." Lyra stood on shaking legs. The guards put restraints on her wrists and led her out of the cell. She looked back once and saw Kellen watching her with sad eyes. They took her to a preparation room. Other females were there, all being cleaned and dressed in simple gray clothing. No one spoke. Lyra let them wash her and fix her hair. She tried to do what Kellen said and stay calm, but her markings kept flickering with fear. One of the handlers, a bored-looking female of a species Lyra did not recognize, noticed her markings. "Stop that," she snapped. "No one wants to buy someone who glows like a distress beacon." Lyra tried to control her emotions, but it was hard. The collar blocked her empathic sense but did not stop her markings from showing what she felt. She took deep breaths and thought about nothing. Slowly, the flickering calmed to a dull, steady glow. They lined up 6 of them and led them through corridors to a large room. Lyra could hear sounds on the other side of a door. Voices, lots of them. The auction house. "You're lot 7, a guard told them. "When they call you, walk out and stand on the platform. Don't speak unless the auctioneer tells you to. Don't make eye contact with the buyers. Don't do anything stupid." One by one, the others were called. Lyra was 4th. When her turn came, her legs did not want to move, but the guard pushed her forward. She stepped out onto a raised platform. Bright lights hit her face, making her squint. Below the platform, she could see rows of seats filled with beings from dozens of species. All of them were looking at her, judging her, deciding if she was worth their money. The auctioneer was a fat Balthesian with slicked back hair and too much jewelry. He smiled at the crowd with too many teeth. "Next item," he called out in a loud voice. "Young Veyan female, age 19 standard years. Healthy, no diseases, no defects. Look at those markings. Genuine bioluminescence. You don't see quality like this every day, folks." Lyra wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Guards stood at both exits. She did what Kellen taught her and kept her face calm. Blank. She stared at a point above the crowd's heads and tried not to think about what was happening. "Bidding starts at 2,000 credits, the auctioneer said. A voice from the left called out. 2,000. 3,000. Another voice said. 5,000. This one came from a well-dressed being near the front. Lyra's eyes flickered to him before she could stop herself. He was looking at her the way someone looks at a piece of meat. The bidding continued. Lyra heard numbers getting higher and higher. Each new voice made her stomach turn. A mining company representative bid 8,000, explaining loudly that they needed workers for their new colony. A private collector bid 10,000, saying something about adding to his collection of rare species. Then a voice from the back made Lyra's skin crawl. 15,000. The speaker was a female running an entertainment house in the inner systems. Lyra knew what that meant. She had heard stories in the holding cell. The auctioneer grinned wider. 15,000 from the lady in red. Do I hear 16? The collector bid 16. The entertainment house owner bid 18. Back and forth they went. Lyra felt dizzy. Her markings started glowing brighter with stress, and the auctioneer pointed it out, using it to drive the price higher. 22,000, the entertainment house owner said firmly. Silence. The collector shook his head and sat back. The mining rep had dropped out long ago. The auctioneer raised his hammer. 22,000 going once, going twice. 30,000. The new voice came from the very back of the room. It was male, speaking in a language Lyra recognized as human English, but with a calm tone that cut through all the noise. The crowd turned to look. Lyra tried to see who had spoken, but the lights were too bright. The auctioneer looked surprised but pleased. 30,000 from the human gentleman in the back. Do I hear 31? The entertainment house owner stood up, clearly angry at being outbid so dramatically. She looked back at the human, then at Lyra, then sat down. No, she said. 30,000 going once, going twice. Sold to the human for 30,000 credits. The hammer came down. Lyra felt her knees go weak. She had been sold. She belonged to someone now. A human. She did not know much about humans, except that they were relatively new to galactic civilization and had a reputation for being either very dangerous or very stupid, depending on who you asked. Guards led her off the platform and down a hallway to a transfer room. She sat on a bench and waited, her mind numb. After a few minutes, the door opened. A human male walked in. He was tall, with dark hair and a weathered face that looked like he had spent a lot of time in space. He wore practical clothing, a jacket over a simple shirt and pants. Nothing fancy. He carried himself like someone who knew how to handle trouble. He looked at Lyra, and she looked back. His eyes were brown and tired. He did not look cruel, but Lyra had learned not to trust appearances. I'm Jake Morrison, he said. His voice was the same one from the auction. Calm, even. Can you walk? Lyra nodded. She did not trust her voice. Good. Let's go. He did not grab her or put a leash on her like she expected. He just turned and walked toward the door, clearly expecting her to follow. Lyra stood on shaky legs and did. They walked through the station in silence. Lyra stayed a few steps behind Jake, watching him carefully. He moved like he knew exactly where he was going. People got out of his way. She noticed he kept one hand near a weapon on his belt, but he never drew it. They reached a docking bay and Jake led her to a small ship. It was not fancy, but it looked well maintained. Cleaner than the slaver ship that brought her here. Jake stopped at the boarding ramp and turned to face her. He reached into his pocket and Lyra flinched. But he only pulled out a small electronic device. This is going to feel weird for a second, he said. But it won't hurt. He reached toward the collar around her neck. Lyra froze, not sure what he was doing. The device beeped, and suddenly the collar clicked open and fell away. The moment it was gone, Lyra gasped. Her empathic sense flooded back like a dam breaking. She could feel everything around her, the emotions of people passing by, the ambient feelings of the station, and most clearly, the emotions of the human standing in front of her. What she felt from Jake Morrison confused her completely. There was no cruelty, no possessiveness, no dark intentions. Instead, she felt determination, sadness, and something that felt almost like hope. Come on, Jake said, putting the collar in his pocket. Let's get off this station. Lyra followed him into the ship, her mind spinning with questions. Why did he remove the collar? Why did she not feel any bad intentions from him? What did this human want from her? She did not know, and that scared her almost as much as the auction had. At least with cruelty, you knew what to expect. But this strange human who bought her for so much money and then freed her empathic sense, the first chance he got made no sense at all. Jake sealed the ship's door behind them and gestured down a corridor. Your cabin is second on the left. You can rest there. I'll let you know when we're clear of the station. Then he walked toward what must be the cockpit, leaving Lyra standing in the corridor alone, free to move, free to feel, but more confused than she had ever been in her life. Lyra stood in the corridor for a long time after Jake left. She could hear him moving around in the cockpit, working with the ship's controls. The engines hummed to life beneath her feet. They were leaving the station. Part of her wanted to run, but where would she go? She was on his ship. Even if she could get off, she had no money, no identification that was not marked as property, nowhere to go. She was trapped, even if the trap looked nicer than she expected. Finally, Lyra made herself walk to the cabin Jake had indicated. The door opened with a soft hiss. Inside was a small room with a bed, a storage locker, and a tiny bathroom attached. It was simple but clean. The bed had actual sheets and a pillow. After weeks on the floor of a holding cell, it looked like luxury. Lyra sat on the edge of the bed and her empathic sense reached out without her meaning to. She could feel Jake in the cockpit. His emotions were focused and calm. He was thinking about navigation, flight paths, nothing about her. It made no sense. She lay down on the bed and closed her eyes. Her body was exhausted, but her mind would not stop spinning. Every time she started to relax, she remembered her father's face as he turned away. Her mother's tears. The auction platform. The collar around her neck. Eventually, exhaustion won. Lyra fell into an uneasy sleep. She woke to a soft knock on her door. Light was coming from a small window she had not noticed before. They were in space. Stars stretched past in the strange blur of faster-than-light travel. Yeah? Lyra called out, her voice rough. Food's ready if you're hungry, Jake's voice came through the door. Then she heard his footsteps walking away. Lyra's stomach reminded her that she had not eaten anything decent in weeks. She got up and left the cabin. Following the smell of cooking, she found her way to a small galley area. Jake stood at a counter, loading food onto 2 plates. He glanced at her. Sit anywhere. Lyra sat at the small table. Jake brought over both plates and set one in front of her. Real food, meat, vegetables, some kind of grain. Her markings flickered with surprise before she could control them. Jake sat down across from her with his own plate. He did not say anything, just started eating. Lyra watched him for a moment, then picked up her fork. The food was simple but good. Better than good after weeks of terrible rations. She ate slowly at first, then faster. Jake finished his food and leaned back. There's more if you want it. Why are you doing this? The words came out before Lyra could stop them. Jake looked at her. Doing what? This, the food. The cabin. Taking off my collar. Why did you buy me if you're going to? She struggled to find the words. If you're going to treat me like this? Jake was quiet for a moment. His emotions felt thoughtful, a little sad. You want the honest answer? Yes. I bought you to set you free, Jake said simply. That's it, Lyra stared at him. That makes no sense. You paid 30,000 credits. For nothing. Not for nothing. For your freedom. But why? Lyra felt frustration building. No one does that. It's stupid. You could have spent that money on anything. Jake sighed. I could have. But about 10 years ago I was on a station in the Outer Rim. I was young, just started hauling cargo. I saw them auction off a human woman. She was maybe 20 years old. Someone had grabbed her from a colony raid and sold her. He paused. I wanted to help her. I really did. But I was broke. Barely had enough credits to keep my ship running. I couldn't do anything except watch them sell her to some mining corporation. He looked at Lyra, and she felt the old pain in him. The guilt. I told myself that if I ever got to a point where I could help someone in that situation, I would. So when I saw you on that platform, I didn't think about it. I just bid. Lyra did not know what to say. She had never heard of anyone doing something like that. In her experience, everyone looked out for themselves first. Kindness was rare and usually came with a price. You're telling me you spent 30,000 credits just to help me? A stranger? Her voice sounded harsh, but she could not help it. What do you really want? Jake's emotions stayed steady. No anger, no hidden intentions. Just patience. I don't want anything from you, Lyra. I'm going to be straight with you because I think you deserve that. Here's the situation. You're free. Legally, the papers say I own you, but those papers don't mean anything on this ship. You can leave whenever you want. I can drop you at any station you choose. And if I have nowhere to go, then you can stay here and work as crew. I'll pay you fair wages. You keep your own cabin. You make your own choices. When you have enough money saved up, you can go wherever you want. Lyra's empathic sense told her he meant every word. There was no lie, no trick, just honest intention. It made her feel strange, like the ground was shifting under her feet. I don't understand you, she said quietly. You don't have to understand me. You just have to decide what you want to do. Lyra looked down at her empty plate. What did she want? A week ago, she wanted to disappear, to not exist anymore because existing hurt too much. But now, sitting in this clean ship with food in her stomach and no collar around her neck, she felt something she had not felt since before her family betrayed her. Hope. Just a tiny bit of it. But it was there. I don't have anywhere to go, Lyra admitted. My family sold me. I can't go back there. And I don't know anyone else in the galaxy. Then stay, Jake said. Learn the ship. Help me with cargo runs. Save up some money. Figure out what you want to do next. Just like that? Just like that, Lyra studied his face. He looked tired. There were scars on his hands. He was not young anymore, probably in his late 30s. He had the look of someone who had spent years in space dealing with all the problems that came with it. What kind of cargo do you haul? She asked. Legal stuff mostly. Food supplies, equipment. I do runs to outer colonies that the big companies ignore. It's not exciting, but it pays enough. Mostly legal? Jake's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. I don't do drugs or weapons, but sometimes I help people who need to move quietly. Refugees mostly. People running from bad situations. That's dangerous, sometimes, but it's the right thing to do. Lyra sat back in her chair. Her markings had calmed to a soft, steady glow. She felt exhausted, but not from lack of sleep. It was the exhaustion of too many emotions, too much change, too much to process. Okay, she said finally. I'll stay. For now, Jake nodded. Fair enough. Can you use a computer? Yes. Good, I could use help with navigation calculations. The ship's computer is old and slow. Having someone double-check the numbers would help. I can do that. Great. We're headed to a colony in the Marek system. Should take about 4 days. That'll give you time to learn how things work around here. Jake stood up and took both plates to the cleaning unit. Get some more rest if you need it. I'll be in the cockpit if you have questions. He left, and Lyra sat alone in the galley. She looked out the small window at the stars streaming past. 4 days ago, she had been sitting in a cell. thinking her life was over. Now she was on a ship with a strange human who claimed he wanted nothing from her except help with navigation. It did not make sense. The galaxy was not this kind. People did not help strangers for no reason. There had to be a catch, but her empathic sense told her there was no catch. Jake Morrison meant exactly what he said. He had bought her freedom and was giving her a choice. Lyra touched the place where the collar had been. Her neck felt light without it. Strange. She had only worn it for a few weeks, but it had felt like forever. She stood up and walked to the cockpit. Jake sat in the pilot's chair, checking readouts on multiple screens. He looked up when she entered. "Show me the navigation computer," Lyra said. Jake's expression softened slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. "Sure, it's over here." He showed her the system, explained how it worked, where the numbers came from. Lyra listened carefully and started learning. It felt good to have something to focus on, something useful to do. Maybe Jake Morrison was telling the truth. Maybe he really did just want to help her. Lyra did not fully believe it yet. Trust was not something she could give easily anymore, but she was willing to try. For the first time since her family betrayed her, Lyra felt like maybe, possibly things might get better. It was a small feeling, fragile, but it was there, and for now that was enough. 3 months passed. Lyra learned fast. Jake taught her how to run the navigation computer, how to check the cargo holds, how to talk to port authorities without raising suspicion. She learned which systems were safe and which ones to avoid. She learned that Jake really did haul legal cargo most of the time, and when he helped refugees, he never charged them anything. The Wanderer became familiar. Lyra knew which panels rattled during takeoff. She knew the shower in her cabin ran cold after exactly 4 minutes. She knew Jake liked his coffee black and too hot, and that he always checked the engine readings twice before jumping to faster than light speed. She also learned that Jake kept his promises. He paid her wages on time, transferred to an account he helped her set up. He never came into her cabin without knocking. He never asked her about her past unless she brought it up first. He treated her like a person, not property, and somehow that was harder to accept than cruelty would have been. Lyra caught herself relaxing around him, laughing at his dry jokes, actually enjoying the work. It scared her sometimes, this feeling that maybe she could trust again. But every time she checked with her empathic sense, Jake's emotions stayed steady, honest, kind. They were 3 days out from a small mining colony when everything changed. Lyra was in the cockpit, running calculations for their approach, when the ship's alarm system went off. Jake, who had been checking cargo in the hold, ran back to the pilot's chair. "What is it?" Lyra asked. Jake's hands flew over the controls. "Ship closing fast from behind, not responding to hails." He pulled up a scanner display. "Damn it. What?" "Draxian ship. And not just any Draxians. That's one of the slaver gang's vessels." Lyra's blood went cold. The same species that had sold her. They had found them. Why would they come after us? She asked, but even as she said it, she knew. Jake had been disrupting their business. Over the past 3 months, he had helped at least a dozen people escape from slavery. Word must have gotten around. "They put a bounty on the ship," Jake said, reading something on his screen. 20,000 credits. They want us stopped." The Wanderer shook as something hit their rear shields. "They're firing on us," Jake said. His voice stayed calm, but Lyra felt his focus sharpen. "Lyra, I need you to reroute power from non-essential systems to the shields. Can you do that?" "Yes." Lyra's hands were shaking, but she pulled up the power management system and started redirecting. She had watched Jake do this before during drills, but never for real. "Good. Now hold on." Jake pushed the ship hard. The Wanderer was not a combat vessel, but it was fast, and Jake knew how to fly it. He dove toward a nearby asteroid field, weaving between the rocks with practiced ease. The Draxian ship followed. It was bigger and had more weapons, but it was also slower. Jake used that to his advantage, making tight turns that forced their pursuers to slow down or risk hitting asteroids. "There's a dense cluster ahead," Lyra said, reading the navigation display. "If we can get through it, they might lose us." "Show me." Lyra highlighted the path on the main screen. Jake studied it for just a second, then nodded. "That's risky. Those asteroids are close together." "I can guide you through," Lyra said. She did not know where the confidence came from, but it was there. "I'm good with numbers. I can calculate the gaps." Jake looked at her. She felt his uncertainty but also his trust. "Okay, guide me." They flew into the dense asteroid cluster. Lyra called out directions, calculating angles and distances faster than the computer could. Jake followed her instructions exactly, never questioning, never hesitating. Left 20 degrees. Now right, straight for 3 seconds. Hard left. The Wanderer twisted and turned through the asteroids. Behind them, the Draxian ship tried to follow but could not keep up. Lyra heard an explosion as one of their pursuers clipped a large rock. "They're pulling back," Jake said, checking his sensors. "Are we clear?" "Not yet. They're going around the cluster. We need to jump to faster than light now while we have distance. But we're too close to the asteroids. The gravity will interfere with the jump calculations." "I know. That's why I need you to calculate it. The computer will take too long." Lyra felt panic rise in her chest. This was advanced navigation. One mistake and they could come out of the jump inside a planet or too close to a star. But Jake was looking at her with complete trust in his eyes, and she realized he believed she could do this. She pulled up the navigation system and started calculating. Numbers filled her vision. She blocked out everything else, focusing only on the math. Mass, velocity, gravitational interference, destination coordinates. "Got it," she said after what felt like forever but was probably only 2 minutes. "Ready to jump. Engage." Lyra hit the jump button. The Wanderer shuddered, and the stars blurred into the strange tunnel of faster-than-light travel. Lyra held her breath, waiting to see if her calculations were right. They came out of the jump smoothly. No alarms, no problems. Safe space, far from the Draxian ship. Lyra let out a breath she did not know she was holding. Her hands were shaking. "You did it," Jake said. He sounded impressed. "That was some incredible navigation work. I was terrified I got it wrong. But you didn't. You saved us." Jake ran his hands through his hair and laughed. It was a tired, relieved sound. "I knew you were good with numbers, but that was something else." Lyra felt her markings glow warm with pride. It was the first time in months that she felt truly useful. Not just doing her job, but actually making a difference. "Why did they come after us?" she asked after they had both calmed down. Jake sighed. "Because we've been making them lose money. Every person we help escape is profit they don't get. They don't like that. This will happen again, won't it?" "Probably." Lyra thought about that. She thought about running, about asking Jake to drop her somewhere safe where she could hide and never have to worry about slavers again. But then she thought about all the people Jake had helped. The refugees who had nowhere else to turn. The ones still trapped in cells like she had been. "Good," Lyra said. Jake looked at her in surprise. "Good? They deserve to lose money. They deserve worse than that." Lyra met his eyes. "I want to keep helping. I want to keep doing what we're doing. It's dangerous. Today proved that, I know. But it matters." Jake studied her for a long moment. She felt his emotions shift. Respect, approval, and something else. The kind of warmth that came from finding someone who shared your values. "Okay," he said. "Then we keep going." That night, Lyra could not sleep. She lay in her cabin, thinking about everything. 3 months ago, she had been broken, sold by her family, convinced that the galaxy was cruel and kindness was a lie. Now she was risking her life to help strangers, and somehow that felt right. She got up and walked to the galley. Jake was there, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, staring out the window at the stars. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "No." Lyra sat down across from him. "Jake, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Back when your family was together before everything, did they ever make you feel like you mattered?" Jake was quiet. Then he said, "My parents died when I was young. I grew up in foster care. Some families were okay, some weren't. I learned pretty early that family isn't always about blood." "Then what is it about?" "Choice," Jake said. "The people who choose to stand by you, who see you at your worst and still think you're worth something. That's family." Lyra thought about her parents. How they had chosen to save themselves and throw her away. How they had picked their own survival over her life. That was blood family. But Jake had chosen to help her. Kellen in the holding cell had chosen to teach her how to survive. That meant something different. Something maybe more real. "Thank you," Lyra said quietly. "For what?" "For choosing me. For thinking I was worth 30,000 credits and a chance." Jake smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine. "Best 30,000 I ever spent." They sat together in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and watching the stars. Lyra realized that something had changed today. She was not just working with Jake anymore. She was part of something bigger. A purpose. A mission to help others the way Jake had helped her. Her markings glowed soft and steady. Not with fear or stress. With determination. The galaxy had broken her once. But she was putting herself back together piece by piece. And this time she was building herself into someone stronger. Someone who could help others avoid the fate she had suffered. Her family had sold her thinking it was the end. But it was actually a beginning. A strange, unexpected beginning with a quiet human who believed in second chances and a ship called the Wanderer. Lyra smiled. For the first time since everything fell apart, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. 6 months after Jake bought Lyra's freedom, they received a message through their network of contacts. There was going to be a major auction on Viridian Station, one of the largest trading posts in the sector. Over 100 captives would be sold in one night. The local authorities were looking the other way because some of them were getting paid off. Lyra read the message twice, her markings flickering with anger. "We have to do something." Jake sat back in his chair. "We do, but this is bigger than what we usually handle. 1 or 2 people we can slip away. 100? That needs planning." Then we plan. They spent 3 days preparing. Jake reached out to every contact he had. Other freelance haulers who hated the slave trade. Former captives who wanted to help. Station workers who were sympathetic. Even a few security officers who were tired of their corrupt bosses. Lyra worked the numbers. How many ships they would need for transport. Which exits on the station were least guarded. Timing, routes, everything had to be perfect. "You know this is going to make us serious targets," Jake said one evening as they finalized the plan. "The slavers won't just send one ship after us anymore. They'll want us dead." "I know," Lyra said. "But if we don't do this, who will? Those people in those cells are exactly where I was. Scared, broken, thinking no one cares." She looked at Jake. "Someone needs to care." Jake smiled. "You've come a long way from the girl who wouldn't talk to me for the first week. You taught me that I could be more than what my family made me feel." "No," Jake said. "You always had that in you. You just needed a chance to remember it." They arrived at Viridian Station 2 days before the auction. The station was huge, full of legitimate businesses mixed with illegal operations. The kind of place where you could buy anything if you had enough money and did not ask too many questions. Jake and Lyra met with their contacts in a quiet bar in one of the lower levels. There were 12 of them total, all willing to help. The plan was simple but risky. During the auction, they would create distractions throughout the station, pulling security forces away from the holding cells. A small team would break the captives out and move them to waiting ships. Everyone would scatter in different directions, making it impossible for station security to chase them all. "The biggest risk is the holding cells themselves," said Connor, a former security officer who had joined their network. "They have good locks and armed guards." "I can get through the locks," offered Maya, a tech specialist who had escaped from slavery years ago. "Give me 3 minutes and I can open anything." "The guards are the problem," Jake said. "We can't kill anyone. That makes us as bad as them." "Stun weapons only," Connor agreed. "Fast and quiet." Lyra had been quiet, thinking, "What if we don't go in through the cells?" Everyone looked at her. "The ventilation system," she explained. "I studied the station schematics. The air ducts connect to the holding areas. They're small, but I could fit through them. I could open the cell doors from inside while you handle the guards from outside." Jake frowned. "That's dangerous. If you get stuck or caught in there alone, I won't get stuck. And it cuts the time we need by half. You said timing is everything." Jake looked at her for a long moment. She could feel his worry, but also his trust. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, but you take a communicator and you stay in constant contact. Any sign of trouble, you get out." The night of the auction arrived. Lyra wore dark clothes and had her hair tied back. Her markings were covered with a special paint that blocked their glow. Jake gave her a small stun weapon and a communicator. "Be careful," he said. "You too." They split up. Jake and half the team headed toward the auction house to create their distractions. Lyra went with Maya and Connor to the holding cell area. Getting into the ventilation system was easier than expected. Maya hacked a maintenance access panel and Lyra climbed inside. The ducts were narrow and dark. She crawled forward, following the map she had memorized. Through the thin metal she could hear sounds, guards talking, someone crying. Her empathic sense told her there were many frightened people nearby. The captives. I'm in position, Lyra whispered into her communicator. Copy that. Jake's voice came back. Starting distraction now. Seconds later, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Lyra heard the guards in the holding area respond, several of them running toward the disturbance. Perfect. She found the access panel she needed and carefully pried it open. Below her was a corridor with cells on both sides. 2 guards remained, looking nervous. Connor and his team burst in from the main entrance. The guards turned, reaching for weapons, but stun blast dropped them before they could fire. Connor's team had been quick and professional. Lyra dropped down from the duct. Maya was already working on the cell locks. One by one, the doors opened. Captives poured out, confused and scared. Listen to me, Lyra called out, her voice firm but kind. We're here to help you. We're getting you out. Follow the team in the gray jackets. They'll take you to ships. Stay quiet and move fast. A young female, maybe 16, grabbed Lyra's arm. Is this real? Are you really freeing us? Lyra looked at her and saw herself 6 months ago. Scared, hoping, afraid to believe. Yes, this is real. Now go. They moved quickly. The captives followed Connor's team through pre-planned routes. Lyra and Maya opened cell after cell. Over 60 people in this section alone. Other teams are reporting success, Jake's voice came through the communicator. But station security is mobilizing. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they lock everything down. Almost done, Lyra said. She opened the last cell and froze. Inside was a Draxian, the same one who had processed her at the slave facility months ago. He recognized her too. His eyes went wide. For a moment, Lyra just stared at him. This was the being who had cataloged her like cargo, who had handled dozens, maybe hundreds of people like they were nothing. She had a stun weapon in her hand. She could leave him here for station security to find. Let him face consequences. But then she remembered what Jake had taught her. That revenge did not heal anything. That being better than your enemies was what mattered. Get up, she said. You're getting out too. The Draxian stared at her. Why? Because we're not like you. Now move before I change my mind. They evacuated the holding cells completely. Over 100 people freed. The team split up and headed to different docking bays where ships waited. Lyra ran with her group, making sure everyone made it. Station security was everywhere now, but the distraction teams had done their job well. The authorities did not know which way to go, and by the time they figured it out, most of the ships were already undocking. The Wanderer launched with 30 freed captives on board. It was crowded, but no one complained. Jake pushed the ship hard, getting clear of the station before anyone could stop them. Hours later, when they were safely in deep space, Lyra finally let herself relax. The freed captives sat in the cargo hold talking quietly, processing what had happened. Many were crying with relief. Some were laughing. All of them looked stunned that they were free. Jake found Lyra standing near the window looking out at the stars. You did good today, he said. We did good, she corrected. All of us. Yeah, all of us. Jake was quiet for a moment. What you did back there, opening those cells, leading people out, that was brave. I just did what you did for me. Gave people a chance. It's more than that, Lyra. You've become someone who helps others. Someone strong. That's not because of me. That's all you. Lyra felt her markings glow warm, not with fear or stress, but with pride and purpose. She thought about the girl who had been sold by her family, who sat in that cell thinking life was over. That girl would not recognize who Lyra had become. What happens now? She asked. We find safe places for everyone on this ship. Then we keep doing what we do. Helping where we can. Jake looked at her. If you still want to, that is. This life isn't easy, Lyra smiled. I want to. This is where I belong. Over the next week, they found homes for all the freed captives. Some went to refugee colonies. Some joined the network of people fighting the slave trade. A few asked to stay and work on other ships in their fleet. The young girl who had grabbed Lyra's arm stayed on the Wanderer. Her name was Sarah, and she had nowhere else to go. Lyra taught her navigation, the same way Jake had taught Lyra, passing on the second chance she had been given. One quiet evening, Lyra sat in the galley with Jake and Sarah, teaching her how to calculate jump coordinates. Sarah was a quick learner, asking good questions. She reminded Lyra so much of herself. You're really good at this, Sarah said to Lyra. How long did it take you to learn? A few months. But I had a good teacher. Lyra looked at Jake and smiled. He taught me more than just navigation, though. Like what? Sarah asked. That the worst things in life don't have to define you. That family is about choice, not blood. And that one person really can make a difference. Jake raised his coffee cup. To second chances. Lyra raised her own cup. To new beginnings. They clinked their cups together. Outside the window, stars stretched endlessly. The galaxy was still a hard place. There was still cruelty and suffering. But there were also people who fought against it. People who believed that everyone deserved freedom and dignity. Lyra had been sold by her own family, thrown away like garbage. She had thought it was the end. But it had been a beginning.